Hi there, my name's Anne Hawkins, and I'm here with another episode of Drive Business Insights. This is the exclusive content that we record for our Pro and Premium members. And this episode is going to be all about how you deal with feeling overwhelmed. We decided to do this because so many people, when they start a business, they seem to become obsessed by it. And I often get questions from people saying, is it normal to feel like this? You know, I'm spending 24 hours a day thinking about my business. When I go to sleep, I dream about it. I can't seem to switch off. And there seems to be so much to deal with. So one of the experts that we have in dealing with this kind of thing is our wonderful member, David Brown. So I'm going to introduce you to David now, and then we'll talk about how you deal with this horrible feeling of feeling overwhelmed by everything. So hi, David. Do you want to just say hello to people and say who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi Anne, thanks. Hi everybody. So my name's David Brown. I'm the founder and director of Potentiality Coaching. And so my main thing is around things like confidence and health and well-being, to do with also fitness and relaxation and just generally trying to keep your life feeling peaceful.
And if anybody's watched any of David's videos on his YouTube channel, his bites of relaxation, even just watching the video makes you feel relaxed. He's got the most wonderful manner. So thanks very much for joining us, David. I'm sure we're going to have a bit of fun with this, I'm sure.
Thanks,
but like I said, a lot of people, when they're in business, they do get this feeling of being overwhelmed, especially a small business, because there often is only you. And there just seems to be so much stuff to deal with. So it's, you know, prioritizing and not procrastinating and lots of stuff that people kind of solve with time management tips. But often that doesn't do it, because a lot of the stuff that's happening is in their head.
Yep.
So can you look at this for us from a completely different perspective and perhaps just start us off with some tips of where people might start to deal with this horrible feeling?
Yeah, so the metaphor that I like to use is like a TV channel or TV, and that you might have maybe 50 or 60 channels transmitting all at the same time, but you're only tuned into one channel when you're watching your TV set. And I think for me, overwhelm feels like you're trying to tune in to every single channel all at the same time, which is just completely unreasonable to expect yourself to have to deal with that and be able to cope with that. So there's no wonder that if you're trying to juggle all of those balls and you're trying to take in the information and you're trying to put information out there in all these different channels, that you're just not going to be able to do it. And it will feel like you're not succeeding, and it will feel really, really stressful for most of the time. And it just doesn't feel like you're actually getting anywhere with it. So in my experience, the thing that we have to try and do is find a way to really zero in on just that one channel.
Okay. So if we imagine we've got the remote control in our hands,
yeah.
How do we choose which channel to use and which channel to choose, and how to block out all the others? Because it's easy with one of these in your hand, isn't it? But it's not when it's all going on in here.
Exactly. And particularly, when we're self-employed and, we are, for most of us, really passionate about our businesses, really passionate about our clients. And there's something all-consuming, I think, about the work that we end up doing that may not necessarily be the case for people who are working for an employer. I know that's not always the case, but, as a general rule. So for me, it's really thinking about, from a business perspective, okay, what is the most important thing? And to maybe spend some time thinking about, what am I here to do? Who am I here to serve? What is going to serve my clients and what is going to serve my business best? And then be able to prioritize that and focus on that exclusively for a period of time. And in that period of time, don't allow yourself, if you can, to be distracted by other things. So turn off the phone, turn off all the beeps and buzzes and all of that kind of stuff as well. make sure that there's ways of making sure that you don't get disturbed by external things, which is really important. But also then you've got to think about, okay, how am I going to stop myself from being disturbed in here? And I don't mean that like really disturbed, but allow yourself to be distracted. Okay. And that's also really important. So for me, what I try and focus on is, if I can get it down on a list, then it's out of my head and onto the page. And then it's about just prioritizing that list and just systematically going through that. And because I've got it down on the list, I don't have to remember anything. Because I've got it down on a list, I don't have to worry about forgetting everything. And I know what's coming up, and I know what I've done, and I can see the progress that I'm making as I progress through my day or my week. And that feels like you're setting yourself up to win. And every time you cross something off on that list, it feels like you are winning. And one of the little tricks that I do is I celebrate that. Sounds a little bit silly, but I give myself a bit of a whoop or a high five or whatever, or go and have a cup of tea. But anything that can make you feel, yeah, I've actually achieved something here, I think it is supportive in your development and growth as a business person.
So using the sort of time-honoured time management tips, really, getting it in a list, getting it out of your head, not constantly nagging yourself about stuff because you've got reminders that will come up and remind you anyway. So that's kind of clearing the head space, so that you can concentrate on one thing at a time.
Yes.
Now, what about the people who are just feeling generally exhausted? Because they've been doing this, because what they haven't programmed in, I suppose, is some rest and relaxation time to take care of themselves instead of just their business.
Exactly. I always use the analogy of if you're on an aeroplane and the pressure in the cabin drops and the oxygen masks drop down. And the instructions at the beginning of the flight are always, if you're traveling with children, to put the face mask on yourself, and then you deal with the kids. Because if you pass out while you're trying to help the kids, you're no good to anybody. So with respect to managing your energy and managing your body and your health, it's really important to look after number one first. Really important to look after number one first, because if you don't, then you can't serve the clients you've dedicated yourself to serve as effectively as you want to. So it's important that you do take rest. It is important that you take breaks during the day, and I can talk about those separately. But the important thing also is to spend time relaxing. So you are unplugging from the phone, you are unplugging from the computer, and you're putting in time, diarising time even, to actually take that rest and go for a walk, have a stretch, have a workout, go for a bike ride. It's one of the perks of being self-employed, right? Is that you've got an office where you can just pop out and jump on the bike or go for a walk, and that's great because you've got your own day.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that so few people seem to do. I'm constantly talking to people who they've actually created a job for themselves and become the worst boss they've ever had.
Yeah.
If a lot of people had to work for someone else in the same way that they work for themselves, they would be suing for compensation or unfair treatment or something like that, because they're working such long hours, they don't take breaks, they're eating at their desk, they're eating unhealthily. It's easy to sit back and say, well, that's just nuts. But when they've got this pressure on them, perhaps to earn money, they've started a business, so they really need to be earning money, they need to be getting customers. That pressure can just wipe everything else out of their heads.
Yes.
So when they're feeling that, when they've got that sense of panic, what's the best thing to do, David?
Okay. A sense of panic is coming from a place of fear. And whenever you make a decision that comes from a place of fear, almost inevitably and almost exclusively, it does not serve you. There is one example when that applies, and that's when a big bear jumps out in front of you and you have to run. And be as scared as you like at that point and get on your bike and get out of the way. But generally speaking, most actions that we take that come from fear do not serve us, because we're coming from what is often referred to as a lack mindset. So we are mitigating for circumstances that probably aren't even going to happen. That we're worried about not having enough money if we don't reduce our fee because the client will walk away. We've all had that thing where the client's trying to bargain us down on our price. And the generally accepted wisdom is stick to your price. But when you're worrying about money, you won't do that. And it'll be a knee-jerk reaction, and it undermines your value in yourself. And to your client, it becomes clear to them that you undervalue your services as well. Mm. So that's an example of when that lack mindset and that fear takes you in a direction that you really don't want to go. Mm. So in my experience, what I try and do is, if I feel that that's happening, what I do is I literally take time out, and I take maybe a couple of minutes and I take some deep breaths. It sounds ridiculous how simple it is, but really focus on keeping that breath long and slow and calm, and feel just in a couple of minutes how your body starts to calm down, how your mind starts to calm down, and how you can begin to shift the way you start to think, because you're no longer coming from this lack mindset. You can encourage yourself to come from an abundance mindset, which is this thing of, okay, I know money is short, but if I stick to my guns, then I am not undervaluing myself, and the client will respect me for that. Now, that still might mean they might not take you as a client, give you their work, but at least you're doing the thing that upholds yourself, because that's the one bit of power that you have. Mm.
So if someone is really worried, we'll continue this theme of not earning enough money from their business, and therefore they feel they have to work harder and harder, run faster and faster to try and do that. I get where you're coming from by saying, look at it from an abundance mindset, but can that be really hard when you're thinking, well, actually, I'm not going to be able to pay the rent at the end of this month? Where does this abundance come from, this feeling of abundance, if you really don't feel as though you've got anything?
Mm-hmm. Again, I start from this. It's a slow process, and it does take practice. So, and I will put my hand up and say that I for many years I ran my business from that lack mindset, and all it does is it just holds you in this little box, and you can't get out of it. Mm. And so the thing that I began to learn was you've got to, so rather than have practiced this lack mindset where all the wiring in your brain is about, I don't have enough and it's not this and it's not that, I don't have this, I don't have that. You begin to practice and rewire your brain to think from this more abundant mindset. And if you practice it, and it's really important to practice it daily, but if you practice it on a regular basis, you begin to rewire your mind. And what you'll start to notice is you'll start to think differently. You'll start to choose differently. You'll start to act differently, purely because you are upholding this way of thinking that is different to the way that you thought before. And it does sound difficult. And it almost seems like just thinking about it a little bit once or twice a day is too easy. But it is that easy. Mm. It is that easy. And most people don't think it is easy or it can't be that simple. So they don't even give it a try. Yeah. My invitation is give it a try.
So is it about thinking it'll all be all right in the end? That maybe you've been here before and it's all worked out before. Is it that kind of thing? Is it more kind of casting your fate to the wind and saying, well, I can't control everything, but I trust that, I've got some skills and I've got something that people want, and therefore it will be all right in the end.
I think there is a sense of trusting in yourself that you have the skills. I don't think that we want to be naive about it, so that we just kind of go, yeah, great, okay, it'll be fine. Like you're trying to stick the tail on the donkey, the party game. It's not, I don't think it's like that. But it is taking honest inventory, if you like, of your skills and the qualities that you possess and what you give to your clients. And then it's also part of that inventory is also recognizing where the holes are in your arsenal or your list of skills and abilities that you have to be able to give people. And some of those skills you're not gonna enjoy, and very often at the beginning of your business you can't afford to outsource them to anybody else. But when you get to a place when you can outsource them, then outsource them. Get them out of the way so that you can focus on the thing that you want to focus on, and you can be the expert on the thing that you're passionate about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's great. Really good advice. We talked a little bit before about taking breaks or just refocusing when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What about the more long-term thing about taking care of yourself? That it's not just about work. It's not just about this constant trying to move the business on the whole time and working as hard as you can, as fast as you can.
Yeah.
But more about, they call it work-life balance. I hate that phrase.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there is a balance. I think it's just, it's just different for everybody. But what about this business of taking care of yourself and the people around you and living a life? You said about one of the perks of running your own business should be that you can do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And yet so few people actually do it and enjoy it. So let's just have a look at that. What kind of advice would you give people around just enjoying life more, I guess?
Well, yeah. I think most of us, what we do, it's a metaphor that you told me about, actually, Anne. The one with the stones and the pebbles and the sand, and that you put the stones in first. So just for those of you who don't know, if you put the big stones in and then the little pebbles, and then you cover it up with sand, if you put it in like a glass. But if you chuck it all out and put the sand in first and then the small pebbles and then the rocks, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit inside the container that they all fitted in before. And so the priority is for you to think about and to prioritize the things that are most important to you. And yes, your business is important, but your business and your business may be a passion of yours that you really want to immerse yourself in. But ultimately, the business should be there to provide you with the lifestyle that you wish to live. That is the bit that's really important.
Yeah.
And to think about that and make that your main priority and make that your main focus. So if you're self-employed, and the reason you're self-employed is so that you can provide for your family and be a great mum or a great dad and be able to spend quality time with them, working a 16-hour day, 5, 6, 7 days a week is not actually what you went into business for. Mm. And so it's about learning how to price yourself in a way that supports that lifestyle, working the hours that support that lifestyle. And that might mean that you have to really be an expert and be exceptionally good at what you do so that you can charge those fees. But that should be part of the privilege of being in a business that you're passionate about and that you want to be great at, in my opinion.
Was it you who was telling me about someone who regularly goes off on a sabbatical or just takes long holidays or something and just lets all his clients know that someone else is going to be looking after them for a while, and then when he comes back, they all come back to him?
Yeah. I've got clients that he one client in particular, and his priority is 8 weeks holiday a year. and he goes off for long weekends, and he takes full 2-3 week, sometimes 4-week holidays, and he's got it all organized that it means that he can send the clients to other people, and then they come back to him. He's got a wonderful relationship with his clients, and that he provides a really, really great quality service.
Yeah.
And he understands that if he doesn't take those breaks, then there's he loses his passion for what he's doing, because he just becomes a workhorse.
Yeah.
And that isn't what he went into business for. He went into business to serve his clients, and in doing that, serve himself and do something that he's passionate about. And also that the salary that he earns from that will be able to give him the lifestyle that he really wants.
I think that's such a fantastic story. It'd be wonderful to think that we might be able to help a few more people do that kind of stuff. That would be great.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
And just to say, it's a work in progress. So, to begin with, it might just have to be that you take, a day. If you can't afford to go on holiday, but take that day, turn the phone off. Even if you can't afford to go somewhere, go for a walk, have a picnic somewhere, just keep it simple if you don't have the money. And as the money comes, so you'll be able to spend more and do more exotic things.
Yeah.
Just because you're spending a lot of money doesn't mean you're having quality time.
Brilliant.
But also, not spending money doesn't mean you can't have quality time.
Yeah.
Money doesn't have anything to do with it. It's about the quality that you give it. And if you give it quality, then it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, fantastic. Talk us through a little bit about the connection. I was thinking about when we do that, when we switch off, we never really switch our brains off, and very often that's when our creativity is at its peak. We come up with all sorts of great ideas when we're actually supposed to be relaxing, doing something else. Yeah. So what is this connection between the mind and the body? When we do something different with our body, the mind seems to go off on a different plane as well.
Yes. So my understanding of it, and I am not a psychologist, and I have had arguments with people that are psychologists about this online and offline. I am not a psychologist, but I do go from my experience, is that, put simply, there are two halves of your mind, or two parts of your mind, the conscious and the subconscious. And most of our working day is spent in the conscious mind. You're thinking about your lists, what to do, what not to do, how do I do this, logistics, strategy, planning, all of those things. And if we keep our focus on that part of the mind all the time, there are some problems that part of your mind just cannot solve. It doesn't know how. I think it was Einstein that said, the mind that creates the problem can't solve the problem. A different mind has to solve that.
Yeah.
So very often you can, talk with other people and all of that, but also your mindset. If you change your mindset, then that's another way of finding the solution to the problem that you couldn't find before. So when you go off and go for your run or your cycle ride, or you meditate, or you do gardening, or any one of a million things that you might go off and do, your mind, your subconscious is left to just float away. And what's amazing about it, and some of you may have already had this experience, you will find the creative solution. It's almost like it kind of goes, okay, we've got this problem. I'm going to go off and I'm going to find the answer. And it just goes whoosh, and it's off. And then an hour later, a day later, maybe even a week later, suddenly the answer will come to you, and you'll have no idea where it came from. You'll have no idea how it happened or how you worked it out, but the solution is perfect. So there is this thing around, and this is also part of the lack mindset, is there is this fear of, I've got to have the answer now. I've got to find the answer. I've got to know how it's going to work. But life, in my experience, doesn't work that way. Very often we don't have the answer, but the answer will come. And it does. And so when we pose a question or when we pose a problem, to relax into that a little bit can be really useful. And that's where taking those breaks and allowing the subconscious mind to mull it over, you come up with brilliant solutions that your conscious mind would never have come up with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost giving yourself the opportunity, the space to do that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
And most people don't, because they're panicking.
Yes, yeah, and that becomes a vicious circle, doesn't it? Which is kind of why we're talking about all this stuff in the first place, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, so David, is there anything else that that you think people might need to be aware of, or some really useful tips or things that you've experienced that you can add into this mix?
Yeah. So a couple of things. The first thing is, if you can avoid it, do not spend too much time sat down in one place. Your body hates it. Your body is designed to move, and your body is intimately connected with your mind. So if your mind becomes tight and rigid and tense, then your mind also becomes tense and rigid. So taking regular breaks is really important, I think. It stops the mind from becoming stagnant and stale, but it also stops the body from becoming stagnant and stale, and it stops you from becoming tired, makes you feel much more vital and much more energized, which is really important. That's the first really important thing. Second really important thing is your diet. If you can, eat healthy and drink lots of water. Sounds very simple, but again, to keep the body optimum, to keep the mind alert, really important. I can't value that enough. And we often don't realize how much better we will feel until we start to eat healthier, and then suddenly we realize we've got more energy. So that's really helpful for me. Third thing is sleep. If you can, try and get 8 hours sleep. And again, when you're self-employed, you tend to work until perhaps just before you go to bed. Try and avoid that at all costs. Try and give yourself at least an hour or more finish work and give yourself an hour before you go to bed, and have a little ritual that begins to calm you down and begins to unplug your mind. And once the mind starts to unplug, your body starts to create chemicals that tell it it's tired, it's time to sleep. So that can be really useful. Then you've got the flip side of that, which is if you wake up in the night and your mind starts to chatter and your mind starts to whiz and whir at 3 o'clock in the morning. Again, breathing exercises in bed, relaxing your body, that works a treat for me. I can get back to sleep in about 5 minutes if I use that, which I think is also really, really valuable.
So take us through one of those, David, because there were quite a few people a couple of weeks ago in the Drive Facebook group saying that they were suffering terribly from insomnia and just waking up and not knowing how to get back to sleep.
Yep.
So give us a couple of tips on that.
Okay, a couple of tips around sleep. If you can find some really nice music that is very, very calming, then put that on quietly and stick the phones in your ears. If not, don't worry about it. Breathing is really, really powerful. So all you do is you just take a deep inward breath. And then as you breathe out, allow the muscles in your body to relax. And focus on that process, just breathing in. And as you breathe out, let as many of the muscles in your body relax as deeply as you possibly can. And it takes time, but if you persist with it, you drop into a calmer and a calmer and a calmer state. And before you know it, you're ready to go back to sleep again.
Fantastic.
It takes practice, but it's worth doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we run, Louise Lee runs these sessions for Drive on what keeps you up at night. Specifically because we know that people get to the end of the day and they start worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, what they're going to do about this. So we kind of bring it out in the open and do a group think about how people can find solutions. And I think that's probably one of the things that we'll tell people at the next one is, some of the breathing exercises. In fact, you might want to join us and do that. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I can do.
Okay.
The other thing about those things, those little worries that keep you up at night, again, I've noticed that if I can just be a bit more organized about dealing with those things, I think one of the things that we do as business people is we put things off. Just as people, we put things off, we ignore them, don't want to deal with that. No. But they're usually the things that keep you up at night when you wake up. So I've learned to, however boring they might be or however difficult they might be, make that call, make that time to do that job so that it doesn't keep you up at night.
Yeah, and I guess that's where, same as we were talking about earlier, if you can get it out of your head and onto a list or onto some kind of reminder where you know that that's going to crop up, it will pop up and be dealt with at another time, then you're not nagging yourself about it, are you?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. David, there's some fantastic tips there, some really, really good, interesting insights into how our minds and our bodies work. Is there any last thing you'd like to finish with?
I think that this mind-body connection is very powerful, and to understand that the body affects the mind and the other way around. So not to just think of ourselves as a brain that is carried around by the body, but the two things are intimately connected, and taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, taking care of your mind is really important. And it makes you more productive, it makes you more creative, but it also makes you much more confident. Excuse me.